I created Geopipe initially a few years ago with my longtime friend and colleague, Thomas Dickerson. We both have spent a very long time in the game design space, even while working on a pair of PhDs in computer science. We were both very interested in hobby video game development from various angles. And one of the things that first excited me about the mixing of the virtual and the real world was trying to put all of New York City into Minecraft as a full-scale one-to-one copy. I thought, well, it would be great to be able to build my own buildings and imagine what New York City could look like if it was in Minecraft, redesign it, recreate it. I certainly didn't want to sit there, especially during a PhD, and build every single building, tree, road, and sidewalk by hand. So I started thinking about how AI could help, how it would be possible to automatically generate rich digital twins of the real world. I very quickly discovered that that wasn't really technology that existed. Even something like Google Earth, you couldn't actually pull in and use inside a game because it's just how the world looks, not what's in the world. There's no knowledge about what's actually there. And hence was founded Geopipe. So today we have built our way from just 2 founders to now a team of 15. And we are basically creating the real world in digital space for every creator. We want to make it possible to take today's reality, understand it, parse it, and turn it into rich 3D environments that we can do things like this that we're doing today. And whether you're an indie developer, a AAA game studio, a simulation creator, you name it. So let me see if I can push my way forward here. This is something we've seen across a lot of different industries today, that increasingly people are really enthusiastic about mixing the virtual and the real world, but they really can't do it. Whether it's someone like a well-known AR company that builds an AR game on top of the real world, but only can update their world every 4 years because there's still human filtering that must be done on the real world, or a really well-known AAA company that built a game set in the real New York City, but had to simplify it down and still took teams of dozens of artists years to build that map, across simulation, where maybe you want to train autonomous vehicles, maybe you want to do crowd simulation for what a better city of tomorrow could look like. Again, these companies are spending millions upon millions of dollars, and these projects can take years of time to actually hand build these 3D models of reality today. So the solution that we've come up with gets the best of both worlds. So photogrammetry, what you've probably seen in something like Google Earth, is really quick. You can take a bunch of photographs, infer the 3D structure of the world. It looks great. You can explore it. Perfect. But because there's no metadata about what's actually there, if we were to be holding the same meeting in that virtual world, we would have a ground that had weird spikes. We'd have trees that were these strange blobs, buildings that had shadows baked in. It's not useful for interactive or real-time simulations. You could hand model the world, but then you'd run into the same problem I ran into when I thought about turning New York City into Minecraft. You have to build every single building, tree, traffic light by hand. It just doesn't scale. So the solution is to get the visual quality of hand modeling with the speed of something like photogrammetry, of an automatic approach. At Geopipe, we do this by starting with raw sensor data about the world. We take things like photos, laser scans, traditional maps, and we pass that through an AI pipeline. AI is a great buzzword today, but this is something we've been working on quite a while. There's real machine learning underneath here. A bunch of different ML techniques, both on the state of the art, the existing cutting edge, and a set of things we've created ourselves, where we can actually segment the world into, okay, this is a building, this is a tree, this is a sidewalk, and then apply specific techniques to say, okay, let's look at this building. We see it's made of brick, it has 10 stories, it has a gabled roof, and then we have rich metadata describing the world in 3D that we can pass directly to a user who wants to do something like, use it to count how many square feet of road there are versus, how many square feet of sidewalk there are. And of course, maybe not so much in a city like New York where it'd be bad enough, but a city like Dallas where I bet half of it is parking lots, that's something that I'm very aware of. Or conversely, we actually go one step further and do something called procedural modeling, where we take all of that metadata and from the ground up, build it into rich, game-ready, polygon-efficient 3D worlds like the one that you can access through a portal that's somewhere around here for one of Geopipe's sample models, where you can actually immediately pull those into your own applications. We've seen, obviously some great stuff with spatial. John over there actually also published a cool demo earlier this week of combining spatial and Geopipe. or into Unity, Unreal, you name it, anywhere where you can import a 3D model and use it. And the advantage of our approach is, not only do you get these highly detailed models quickly, you also still have that metadata embedded, so you can make these interactive. You know what a window is, so it'll be reflective. It could potentially break. You have doors that can open. You could restrict cars to only drive on the things that are labeled as roads, etc. And today we are making these available to pretty much everyone. We've published this in New York City for free. You can get it on our website, geopipe.ai. We're also working on expanding our coverage this year. So we aim to have about a dozen cities at that same level of quality by the end of the year. And I strongly encourage you, if you're working on something in the gaming space, in the VR space, and you want to try building in a large scale environment, even, whether it being New York City is important to you or not, it's really fun just to have a huge environment that you can start building in. So that's really all I wanted to share as me just talking at you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or if there's any other details that I can mention, either about what we do at Geopipe, about my thoughts on digital twins and the intersection of VR and gaming, or wherever you'd like to take the conversation.
That's great. Thank you so much. And looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts and comments. I had one question about how you plan to like improve the models over time.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
for example, we just took a look and we were interested in the High Line because it's
Yep,
kind of referenced in our project. And I think the details that they pulled in, the textures weren't exactly correct, and probably there's a lot
sure.
of stuff generated. How do you kind of train or edit or improve it,
Yep.
from the initial model to where we want it to be?
Yeah, great question. So it's a mix of making more AI and training the existing AI to be better. So we've built this as a closed loop, mostly an automated system. So for example, we can rebuild our New York City every 12 to 24 hours, depending on how many servers we're throwing at it. But we also, of course, as you say, want to make it better. So for example, right now, our system will highlight things that seem like they're wrong. So one of the great data sources we have available to us are point clouds. If you're not familiar, this is either taking a bunch of photographs like photogrammetry from different angles and inferring where there's a physical point, where there's a material in the real world, or you can use a LiDAR or laser scanning and, again, create this three-dimensional cloud of points where the real world has something. You don't know exactly what's there or how those points are connected. And that's a big part of what our AI does, figure out how those points are connected into cubes and triangles and tree shapes and so on. But our system can see where that point cloud is far away from something we've detected, say like the deck or the piles, the columns holding up the High Line, see that that's wrong, ask a human, hey, I don't understand this. What is this? And then, hopefully the next time it goes through, it'll have a better sense of the world. Another thing you mentioned is material. So right now we're mostly working from top-down information. So for example, the materials on the side of something like a building or the High Line, we infer or guesstimate. As we're pulling in more data, as we're getting things like oblique angle images or even street level imagery, then we can be actually filling in more information, knowing precisely what's there rather than guesstimating. And the final component of this is we have a number of great AI folks on our team that are building up constantly new techniques. So for example, the streetlights that you'll see in our models are accurately detected of exactly where the streetlights are. That's something that our AI team finished about a month ago. And we have lots of other things like that coming down the pipeline, much more detail to the massing of buildings, being able to fill in lanes in the roads, adding traffic lights, being able to get 3D road networks and 3D transportation networks. All of those are ongoing levels of detail that we're adding. And the nice thing, because this is automated, once we add a new thing to the pipeline, every city that we have will have those as well. So, we're also really excited to accept feedback from you folks on, number one, what level of detail is most important to you, what things you want to see added to the world, and number two, what cities you really care about, as we continue to build our priority list of what cities we're going to be building next.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
What data sources do you have for street level data for like images? Is there
Yeah.
good data sets for that, or would that be something like if there's a big enough community and you like wanted to get a particular neighborhood, people can kind of
Hmm.
get street photos, or is there enough good set? There's enough good photos available where you don't.
It's definitely easier to get top-down aerial data than it is to get street-level imagery. The nice thing is, although we started with publicly available data, so we started working with data from federal and city governments, from open source places, we've increasingly moved towards working with private companies that have their own data collection systems, whether that's an existing library of data, going out and driving a car, flying a drone, flying a fixed-wing aircraft. And in some cases, those data providers have data sets of street level imagery that we can use, or we can commission them to go out and get them. As we're scaling up, we anticipate that a lot of our work will be with some of these bigger data providers, bigger tech companies that have existing libraries that they might be able to work with us to use. And in exchange, we have great metadata that we can extract from that information that's a value add for them.
Thank you.